Hello, everybody. Sorry for the couple minutes late start. Today is Wednesday, December 20th. This is episode 65 of Block Digest. And right now, we are finally over the 500,000 block mark at 500,321. And today we've got two special guests joining us today. We've got Mr. Bill Mallers from Chicago.
Oh, Bill, you're muted.
I guess he's
Got it.
Well, it's great to have you on, Bill. And his son, Jack Mallers, everybody I'm sure knows, working on the Zap Lightning wallet, doing God's work.
What's going on? Thanks for having me.
And then we've got our regular cast of Mr. Rick, the Meme Master.
Hey, everybody.
Mr. JW in his Vader mask today.
Hey, guys. Lots of fun stuff to talk about today.
And Miss Janine.
Hello, everybody.
And so I guess let's dive right into it. You want to kind of break down your assessment of this whole Coinbase situation yesterday, Bill, and kind of run through what the CME and some of the I guess the legacy players are kind of thinking, looking at all of this.
Oh, sure. I know, but I mean, I have not gotten to the bottom of it. I've got a lot of calls and I've gotten a few calls back, but I haven't, in my mind, put the whole picture together. We know that Brian Armstrong announced that he's looking into, they moved up the date of GDAX launch. It was not planned until January, right? And they moved it without, any warning. And it rallied sharply. And there's a lot of suspicious buying that preceded the announcement. So they're looking into whether whether that release was leaked and whether any Coinbase employees profited off of it. That's front running, that's enriching yourself at the expense of your own customers. That's wrong, not gonna minimize it, but that is really not my main concern. My main concern on this is a company that cannot keep a major release like that. They can't keep that from leaking, and they can't keep their own customers from getting front run by their own employees. If that's true, we don't know if it is, but if it is, they are one of the main contributors to the price index that we're going to cash settle against. That's a problem. That you got to have with all the skepticism that CME faced with this launch. And I think I've said this on this show. The CME rep that was the quarterback of getting this off the ground. She says, that was the hardest 2 years of my career. There's so much skepticism, manipulation, drug money, laundering. And then on the first day of the product launch, one of the 4 exchanges that we cash settle against is now investigating themselves for leaking and front running and profiting and front running their own customers. I think like I said, I can't say it because I don't got the answer, but when I do get the answer, I hope it goes something like this. Yes, GDAX told us right when we first approached them that they might be offering competing currencies, and they were above board with us, and they gave us a heads up before they launched. I hope that's what I'm gonna hear, because if not, that's not the way we do business in Chicago. It really isn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's really ridiculously unprofessional. And I mean, considering Coinbase is one of the most licensed up businesses in the space, and they kind of have been trying to sell themselves as like the compliant business, the one with the appropriate licenses to operate in all 50 states. And then they just like weeks early drop this out of nowhere. Like nothing is operating properly. I mean, when I first went to check my Coinbase app to see if I'd had any on the exchange at the time for my shift card, like the logo wasn't even resolving properly. It was showing me like the fiat balance amount where it should be showing me like my amount of balance in Bitcoin Cash. And like the entire platform was just bonked like right off the bat and then flew up to 3 times the price of the other exchanges. I mean, it's like it just completely destroys that appearance of professionalism in the space.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the fact that when they did launch, you could buy Bitcoin Cash, but you couldn't sell it, right? That seems a little odd. And then the logos, they're not quite ready to allow you to sell Bitcoin Cash, but they changed the logos. They managed to get that into their dev release schedule so that you couldn't even distinguish between the Bitcoin Cash logo and the Bitcoin logo. They used to be orange and blue, and then they decided, orange and green, and then they decided they should just both be white, exactly the same font, exactly the same color, just one leaned a little bit over. So they managed to work that stuff in, but any of the things that we would be worried about as far as being able to get real price discovery, that just coincidentally didn't work out, right? Like it's a little bit much to swallow. And that's just on top of, the other concerns around how they may have, treated the CME.
So are we shocked that Coinbase and the clowns running it are running a circus show? No, I'm not shocked at that. They've been attacking Bitcoin for years now. But I think that this finally justifies an investigation on front running, on market manipulation, and then whether they need to be involved in some regulated, Bitcoin products, financial products that are going to be coming out in the next coming years. Futures products, we can get into this in a sec for like the really hardcore libertarians out there that don't want any regulation involved in Bitcoin ever. But regulated futures products, option products, ETFs, these are important products for any, established asset, for the general public to be involved and invested in Bitcoin. So does Coinbase now, can they actually be involved in a spot index for these products? I personally don't think so. I think Brian Armstrong should be fired. The fact that they got away with saying that you can expect withdrawal on Jan 1 or Q1 of 2018. So that is, yeah, thank you for pulling up the graphic. No buy, no sell, only withdrawal, just like ETC. So they're leading the market to believe one thing. Then wait for the holiday. Well, this is all speculation, so take it for what it's worth. Launch on the holiday with buy sell on a large exchange that carries massive, massive, massive volume. And we can see through, volume on other exchanges that it was probably leaked. They probably front ran it. I know that they front ran the Litecoin leak. I mean, it's garbage. They've been garbage for years, but finally, I think that this justifies, and, Brian Armstrong knows that he doesn't want the CFTC showing up at his door. So what did he write this morning? He's going to go fire some poor kid for front running and trading so that the CFTC doesn't bash on his door. Of course he is. They're in trouble. They're clowns. I agree with my dad where front running in this industry is tough. How you tell an engineer to add Bcash and then not have him go buy it, that's a tough thing to do. But do I want Coinbase involved in the ETF? Do I want them involved, providing price data to the CME, to NASDAQ as we start to get regulated products and actually bring, a real sense of establishment to this asset? I don't want Coinbase and Armstrong near that. Get that guy fired and get someone else who knows how to operate a business and an exchange and financial product involved, please, for God's sake. That's fine.
That's what I tell you. If you're like Jack and I have been reading from the same script, if you're worried about, you're worried about volatility, short selling, greedy speculators. Okay, fine, fair enough. Worry about that, but don't worry about the integrity of this product. Merck knows how to take care of it, and bang, right out of the gate, we're under the main source of our price index is internally investigating what looks pretty obviously like front running their own customers. That is, I gotta say to anybody that it's endured one of my lectures over the past years, you guys were right. maybe. Now, maybe the CME is, like I said, I haven't gotten all the callbacks yet. I don't know what, I'm sure I'm told, here's what you're going to hear. We can't be quoted at this point, but we are aware of it, and we do believe we have the controls to protect the integrity of this product. And as always, modifications can be made. But if we really do have to make those modifications, and put in tighter controls, and then go out another year or two from now and get Bitcoiners to take us seriously again, it's going to be twice as hard. It's a shame that we didn't get a clean launch is all. But like the other half of phone calls I've been getting today is Bitcoin's fine. You got it. That's what happens at centralized exchanges, leaks, front running stuff, but Bitcoin's operating exactly as Bitcoin should. Bitcoin's fine. I know. But what a nice to get the credibility and the access that CME would, that a clean launch at CME would have given us. So, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, to go off of Jack's point that all Coinbase is probably going to do in the immediate future is that they're going to fire some contractor, put the blame all on them. That's one of the things that I was saying. That's actually the only thing I've really said in regards to Coinbase in the last day or so is that, you know, Brian Armstrong automatically said that they're going to investigate employees and contractors, but like, does that also mean that they're going to look at the executives and the higher management? Like, are they going to look at everyone, or are they just going to look at the employees who they can scapegoat? Because I know for a fact that there's definitely an undercurrent of like an open secret favor system going on, especially with custodial exchanges, where these executives they have a pattern of giving favors to their personal friends. So if Coinbase is only going to investigate their employees, then they're never going to find out, or no investigator is going to be looking at the personal friends of the executives, even though that's the most likely case that happened. Is probably it was the personal friends of people high up in Coinbase that had the most opportunity to take advantage of the situation, because no one would ever suspect them. They would suspect the employees. They wouldn't suspect people unrelated to the company. Yeah,
so I agree with that. And when I've been having discussions with friends and stuff so far, and they're like, well, what about like Poloniex or Bittrex? Or they front run these little alts and stuff that they post. They'll buy them all at whatever 10 sats, and then it pumps when they get released. So front running, especially in this industry, is going to be like a really difficult thing to try and handcuff people for. Just go launch an anonymous exchange, you know, registered in Panama, and you can front run anything you want. But the CME will never use Poloniex's BTC to USDT data on, you know, a regulated financials future product. The thing I just wanted to make sure that this point gets across, even though it probably already has, but the thing that really, really pisses me off is that Bitcoiners we've been taking shit for years. We're the criminal drug, terrorist currency, you know, gold 2.0, yeah, right. That's what, you know, my drug dealer uses to pay rent or whatever to route around the Fed. We finally have established ourselves as a real asset. We have a relationship with the CME who has an index. We got NASDAQ involved. There's ETF proposals everywhere. We have a good, reliable spot index so that we can start building serious financial products on this asset and become legitimate. And Brian Armstrong, the first week of launch, goes and launches a direct competitor, misleads customers, front runs it, and puts out falsified dates, and does not give any runtime for any market participant to prepare for the launch of a new asset that is a direct competitor and trying to steal the brand of the product that they are providing data for, that is regulated by the CFTC. That is a huge deal. It is one thing for Poloniex to like front run a new ERC20 token. It is another thing for Armstrong to pull this. So front running in this industry, like I saw Ari Paul, I respect Ari. He was like talking about it on Twitter, like, how are you going to stop someone from launching an ICO and front running it on Bittrex? You probably won't. So ICOs will probably die long before you can stop that front running. But how can we make sure that we are a reliable, trustable asset and have trustable like exchanges and financial institutions in this industry that can provide, you know, data to the likes of the CME, the NASDAQ, the SEC? You know, Brian Armstrong self-investigating some poor intern and firing him to cover his ass. I want to get out and say that that is not enough. I want the CFTC involved. I want the CME involved. That guy has been an enemy to Bitcoin for enough years. And the fact that we've worked this hard, he's going to tarnish our reputation with a lot of these financial institutions where we want an ETF product. We want a futures product. Someone needs to get in there, get Coinbase off of these indexes. People need to withdraw their coins from Coinbase. It is just disrespectful to the industry. It's disrespectful to the CME. It is a circus over there. And that's the point I want to get across. Front running crypto assets is going to happen. Brian Armstrong smacking Terry Duffy and the CME in the face the first week that they launch a product they've been working on for 2 years and disrespect the Bitcoin community again. To me, that's the last straw.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important context, right? Like if they did all of these things, right? Like, oh, we just made a mistake. We made the logos look exactly the same, right? Like there can be these little weird circumstantial things that people can make a mistake about. But when everything lines up on the same day that you have a marketing blitz and everything just everything comes together so nicely, it's really hard to go, oh no, these guys aren't trying to pump Bitcoin Cash, right? Obviously they are. And like you said, there's a history. It's not like Coinbase wasn't fully supportive of the Bitcoin XT attack and the Bitcoin Unlimited attack and the SegWit 2X attack. So this latest thing is completely in line with all of the nonsense they've been doing to try to change the nature of Bitcoin to defend their business model, right? I mean, we've got decentralized exchanges coming out. We've got all kinds of things that are going to make them less relevant when we get Lightning and things like that, being able to do, what you're doing right now, building a user-friendly wallet that's going to allow people to send Bitcoin to each other for super low fees. I mean, that was pretty much their business model for quite a while, was they were going to be that central hub, and it was going to be cheap to send people stuff, right? Yeah, they're an exchange and they've got some other stuff, but that's a huge part of their business. So I think it's a little too generous and a little too naive to act like these guys aren't making pretty obvious moves to defend their little fiefdom, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like to kind of like widen the scope a little bit. I mean, the shadiness of the situation is a lot more than just how Coinbase themselves handled it. I mean, if anybody follows Whale Panda on Twitter, like something else that pretty much came to light yesterday, CNBC Fast Money, their Twitter account, pretty much took the chart from Coinbase that was showing a $9,000 price, almost 3 times every other exchange, and they tweeted that chart out and announced they were going to have Roger Ver on this morning to discuss Bitcoin Cash. And, a bunch of people pretty much played Twitter detective, and they found that this man, Paul Weisensteiner, is an operator of a Bitcoin Cash meetup in London, and actually the director of the Bitcoin Cash Fund, which I believe is something to kind of fund PR for Bcash. And his wife is actually the head of marketing and partnerships at CNBC. And, anybody following the Fast Money account over like the past week or so, like they have been making childish tweets. I mean, like things like this, where it's like Bitcoin Jesus on tomorrow, deal with it. And just completely like acting like a total troll to people, going like, why are you being misrepresentative of the situation, one-sided in your coverage? Like, why are you putting out a chart on one illiquid exchange that is 3 times the price of all the other exchanges because of how illiquid their books were? And then actually looking at his personal account and the CNBC Fast Money account, the kind of language that each account is using is almost identical. Like the so sad afterwards, and just constantly telling people deal with it. And I mean, like this is incredibly shady to me. The fact that not only is there all these issues with Coinbase dropping this product out of nowhere when they'd 4 days ago published documents saying that they were just going to support withdrawals and not till January. And then CNBC is pushing this, misrepresenting the price of the chart. The person who's operating their Twitter account is just being wildly unprofessional. And like on top of that, CNBC has pretty much been refusing to book other people in the Bitcoin space to actually go on and discuss anything. They've pretty much just been providing Roger Ver a platform to just pretty much show Bcash completely uncontested, with nobody to offer any kind of counter arguments to things. And I mean, like just the level of underhanded manipulation taking advantage of personal relationships in the background through these different organizations is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, like, I imagine they've got to be pretty big hodlers of Bcash to be, you know, pumping that, like, that account and pumping Roger up there as much as possible. And yeah, it's just really aggravating seeing, like, you know, this happen. And it's, you know, like Coinbase and Brian Armstrong, we need SegWit, and they just keep on pushing these, like, oh, we need these other coins. And then we see, like, they obviously looks like they front run their customers and everything. And it's hard to stop that in the Bitcoin ecosystem because of all these incentives to do that, to make your own money. And like, it's really aggravating because, like, you know, Bill and Jack are saying, it's like, we got this and we've been putting this, like, in front of legitimate people for so long, and it's hard and it's like a fight. And yeah, I wish Coinbase would take a bigger action than reprimanding some low-level engineers, and really, like, you know, take a stance and say, like, we want Brian Armstrong out, and maybe, you know, that'll show a good intention on Coinbase's part.
Yeah, and of course, the CNBC account never tweeted the graph where the price absolutely crashed right after Coinbase realized their mistake and closed trading. That was, I heard a lot of people saying that was probably the biggest drop they've ever seen, let alone in cryptocurrency, which, you know, still volatile, but that was a pretty crazy drop.
No, I'm still like I say, I'm still keeping my fingers crossed. I don't know you know, what steps and control CME has in place, and I will be disappointed if they got blindsided by this, because I've just, in my career, I've seen plenty of scams. I remember a trading group tried to pull a scam off in the T-bond pit, and they got to the bottom of it and they fired the rogue trader. Yeah, and board traders like, sure. And where did all the other, who was on the other side of those trades, and tracked them all down? I mean, you might, Bitcoin got here during the financial crisis. That financial crisis and all the shenanigans and forged statements and illiquid assets, none of that happens in Chicago. That's why I was so happy to get, you know, Bitcoin on a Chicago platform, so we could show you guys that the whole financial world isn't hopelessly corrupt. And like I said, still keeping my fingers crossed that CME was on top of this and can make the modifications to launch this contract successfully. But the timing of the insider trading, front running, right? I you know, from one of our major price contributors, really, image-wise, couldn't be worse.
That's one of the things that I'm wondering about. I mean, I've been involved in some other companies and seen a lot of this front running stuff, but I think the thing that gets me so mad about that is that this isn't just some, you know, random stock where somebody has a percentage of their 401k in it and we're expecting a certain amount of corruption and hyperbole from the CEO and all this other stuff. This seems like a whole new level of deception, right? A well thought out, coordinated attack on investors, right? So I don't know when it crosses the line from you know, front running or maybe a little insider trading sort of stuff to full on fraud, where, you know, it's very obvious that they've tried to deceive people into making bad decisions.
Yeah, I actually was going to use the whole, like, CNBC thing. I'm going to use it to shine some positive light a little bit, and try and separate, you know, where my frustrations are, because the CNBC stuff looks exactly like how our summer with Garzik went, or it looks exactly like the Hearn Rage quit. It reminds me of Ben Lawsky. It reminds me when, you know, Silk Road went down and mainstream took Bitcoin to the throat because of that. The Honey Badger will live on. I think Bitcoin's totally fine, and I don't mean to freak anybody out, and I hope that I haven't. And so if CNBC wants to push Bcash and, you know, try and market manipulate through their platform, I hope that they lose a lot of credibility. I hope that people question, you know, the advice that they pitch every night. I hope it makes them look like the child and clowns that they are, just like, you know, Garzik is looked at, and just like Lawsky's looked at now. I look at it the same way. So I think, you know, Bitcoin's going to be fine. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw an all-time high before the year was over, you know, the way that this asset rallies and flushes out, you know, weekends. So The CNBC stuff, you know, it is a coordinated attack. It does look like a sophisticated, planned out thing, but it doesn't really get to me in the way that, you know, this asset is a real asset that needs to be in the portfolios of many, for the simple fact that outside of, you know, we all want to make money and stuff and price to go up and more adoption, but Bitcoin helps people. If people can get Bitcoin in their portfolio, diversify and protect themselves against, you know, a crash like 2008 and diversify into this asset that is decentralized and censorship resistant, they could hedge themselves with a futures contract. That's really important. And if Armstrong is going to get in the way. So anyways, you know, CNBC is more like Honey Badger moves on. I dare the CNBC to try and get away with Bitcoin. We've dealt with way worse. But if Armstrong is going to try and flick off, you know, really regulated and established financial, you know, products, then someone fire that guy, get your coins off Coinbase. And can we please get, you know, the CFTC in there and please look at that operation that they got going on.
Yeah. No, I'm just remembering, God, we had some of those thin treasury issues that some of those New York securities firms would you know, squeeze their own customers. They had their own customers caught on the short side, and they'd squeeze them, and you're like, oh my God, that is the most unethical. But whatever, that happens over there. You know, we were all about transparency and proper capital controls, and I just don't want. I'm just, like I said, haven't gotten all the callbacks yet, but I'm assuming CME with, yeah, they've managed awfully risky products through some awfully difficult, you know, 87 crash, now, you know, wild currency markets, droughts, floods. I hope, and they say they've done their homework. They say they've been doing this for 2 years. I hope they didn't get blindsided by this, and I hope they, now knowing that a major component of their index is not doesn't run a pretty tight ship. I'm hoping they're going to make the modifications and restore confidence in this contract, because I really do think it could be big for Bitcoiners.
I have one question with regards to, because you tweeted that I Am Nomad was the first one to make the CME or you aware of the fact that Coinbase was up to some suspect behavior. And I noticed that he submitted his complaint through the whistleblower program. Is that normally how complaints are made, or is there a separate, is there a severity scale? Like if he knew some like highly sensitive information, he would go through the whistleblower program. But if he just wanted to make a complaint, how would he do that?
I'm afraid I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar with the whistleblower. I don't think that that was an option when I had my business. I'm gonna hand off to somebody else.
It actually might have been the CFTC. I think he did. He also made a complaint through the CFTC. I think that's what it was. But I was wondering if you knew anything about that, whether the CME had some kind of complaint system to take the information.
I know that on the CME spot index price that lists all the quotes from the exchanges that provide market data, that they list, I assume that's where you found the whistleblower site, is they list that whistleblower link if there is any like suspect activity or complaints that want to be registered regarding the Bitcoin spot. So I assume that's where he found it. And I assume that's where you're supposed to go, but I also am not sure. I'm pretty sure, Dad, you've just been calling contacts at the CME yourself personally, I think.
Yeah, nothing again. Been retired for a while. Nothing against CFTC. I'm sure they've got a lot of competent investigators there. But if you want to get to the bottom of trading malfeasance, you want CME on the case, and not, you know, a government oversight agency. They'll get the answer. They got a lot more vested in getting the answer. You know, I mean, as you guys, I'm sure, I think I said this last time I was on the show. How in the world does stock index futures trade at CME and not New York? Currency futures, metals futures have more natural financial centers where they more naturally would have sprung up. CME knows that the reason we have this lucrative franchises is because we can protect the integrity of it. So yes, there are government agents, you know, CFTC is, I'm sure, you know, responding to the ticket and looking into it. But the ones that are really motivated and know how to chase out the fraudsters is the exchanges. That's where That's what I'm assuming is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think it would be good. There were some questions below Jack's tweet because he said that people could ask questions for you guys to answer. And the first one is, why do you think there's no significant competition to Coinbase? And is there anything the community can do to go around companies like Coinbase?
So I do think that there is competition. I think that in regards to being like a regulated, in what was it? Shinobi said like all 50 states or some, I don't know the technical details of how they're regulated throughout the country, but I think there is competition with Gemini, and then Square Cash looks like they're going to be a broker of Bitcoin. And I expect that to be common throughout the Bitcoin industry as we see people starting to support these hard forks and stuff. One of the positives of this is I hope Coinbase, for example, gets flushed out of the spot index and brokering a lot of US customers, and that they move on to whether Gemini can provide that service or Square Cash can broker and the spot index can harden. Because I mean, in the grand scheme of things, we have 2 futures products that are a few weeks old. It would be a lot worse if we had many futures products, options, ETF. So I think that this could be good in incentivizing some competition, incentivizing people to run a tight ship, because it's clear that we need one. But I wouldn't say that there is no competition. Gemini, I'm going to start recommending people to go to the Winklevoss twins exchange. They run spot on SIBO, so.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget Bitflyer just opened in the US too. And I mean, like, when things really start opening up to competition over the next few years, I really think like the landscape for on-ramps for people is just going to wildly change. I mean, like Square Cash rolling out past beta will be an amazing thing. And I mean, also just things like ATMs, like the more they proliferate, I think the more we'll start to see ATMs start undercutting each other on the premium. And I mean, over the longer term, like that's a race to the bottom in its own right, because they're pretty much just running arbitrage from exchanges. And I mean, like, it just really takes time and competition, and I think a little more clarity on the legal side of things. Like, I know especially for ATM operators, there's a kind of a lot of uncertainty depending on where they're operating.
Well, Coinbase has always been, the retail, has always had the retail niche. They're just the most visible, but I don't think, because of the fees or the bid-ask spread or the amount of disclosure involved, I mean, any large Bitcoin traders trade OTC anyways, right, Jack? I mean, all those guys, from Don's office and all the guys that trade big don't go through the Coinbase. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's more, the Merrill Lynch, high profile, high regulated, high fee, retail slice of the business.
Yeah,
there's always been other ways to access it.
I kind of think of it similar to, I also expect a lot more mining competition now that we're going to have hopefully now a serious futures product to reduce some of the risk that's involved in such a capital intensive mining. I think it's similar to Coinbase competition and brokering at a large scale to more of the mainstream audience of potential Bitcoin customers. Coinbase had that industry on lock. They were first movers, and there wasn't much of an incentive. It's a very capital intensive business to run with the lawyers that you have to hire and the constant legal battle that you have to fight. So there wasn't much of an incentive with a Bitcoin price at 300, 600, 1,000 for people, and knowing that we've seen 80% drops in the past, for people to risk such capital up front with the law fees and getting regulated. Now that you can front sell contracts, sell on the short side, lock in prices with a futures contract, we see that this is an established asset that's being taken seriously by NASDAQ, taken seriously by CME, lots of ETFs being proposed. I think it's only a matter of time before someone who actually knows how to run a tight ship goes and tells Armstrong, like, listen, if Bitcoin's here to stay, then, be ready to have a popular block. I bet there's houses being built right now. Similar to mining too, I bet there's a lot of people that can give Jihan a run for his money if they know that the capital they're investing up front is secured and they can hedge that in a way. So I think it'll only be a matter of time. I wouldn't be shocked. You know, either Brian Armstrong gets fired, or everyone else is using something else as a U.S. citizen. So, my opinion.
Yeah, the first thing I think of is Bisq network, because you know, you can get to market faster usually if you've got a closed source, you know, VC funded operation like Coinbase. But the thing that those guys are always worried about is the open source community driven effort that's maybe a year or two behind them, right? And I think you know, you could probably argue that Bisq is maybe a year behind them as far as user experience goes, because it doesn't have all the fenders on it yet. The infrastructure is pretty impressive, and the security benefits of using a decentralized exchange are, you know, there's a lot to like there. And so I'm pretty hopeful that that's gonna you know, eat their lunch. Between that and Lightning, I wouldn't want to be an investor in Coinbase right now. I wouldn't have wanted to be an investor in Coinbase a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, I personally feel kind of like dirty after like all the events of yesterday, because I pretty much have 100% of my savings in Bitcoin right now. So I pretty much have to have a Coinbase account, because a Shift card is really my only option to be able to spend it like I need to. Otherwise, like BitPay is my only other option, and with them I don't have the ability to actually hold it in Bitcoin until the moment of spending it. So not only would I have to be dealing with the fees on the network at the moment, but I would literally be paying that fee premium to drop it right as I'm going to use it and have it instantly converted to cash. And I mean, like that really bothers me, because as somebody who's all in, like I literally have no other options to be able to spend my money when I need to.
No, I was just going to ask for permission to quote you on that one. I just feel dirty. I mean, Bitcoin's going to be fine. We're going to get a derivatives. We're going to grow up. We're going to move beyond Carpellis and Shrems and all that, and legitimacy and square readers and everything. But you just kind of feel, I don't know, like I think you said it well. I just feel dirty right now that we got a front running scam right on day one of this big launch.
Well, we're not completely clean of Carpellis yet, because apparently he's still considering doing an ICO at some point to, well, actually, no, he's not doing that anymore, because I guess because Bitcoin's price appreciated so much that they're like, oh, so all the Bitcoin we still had as assets is now enough. I don't think they've actually paid back any of their customers that suffered losses yet, but hopefully he chooses that over doing an ICO.
No, that's a bull market, my friend. When even the Fallons get thrown into jail and the left, and after they get done paying all their fines, they're still, how much did you say? That's a nice bull market, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know the exact figure, but apparently the Bitcoin assets that they've held on to or managed to hold on to while he was in prison and everything going through the close to bankruptcy, apparently that Bitcoin has appreciated so much in price that they now have enough to pay back their customers if they wanted to. I think that's what I read.
Yeah, I could look it up. The number I thought was after they paid back their customers, Mark was still going to have like $100 million. It's just a crazy number, but yeah, it's a good problem to have. You're right. I mean, there's a lot of things that we could be pissed off about right now, but when you put it in context of this last year,
even the lousy guys that can't competently run a business are going to end up with $100 million. That's a heck of a bull market.
Oh yeah, hopefully. Brian Armstrong will take his and just exit stage left at this point.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think, you know, we've kind of been beating Coinbase and Roger to death, I guess, here. And I'm just kind of realizing now the rest of the stories we're covering, with the exception of one or two, are pretty much all just FUD at a massive scale we've never seen before. But I mean,
maybe we,
you know,
do you want to talk?
Jack, like, you guys are.
Do you want to talk? Oh,
I was just going to say, like, you guys are welcome to stick around and kind of give your input on the rest of the stories if you have time, or if you're busy, you can drop off, whichever one you guys are more comfortable with.
No, I'm sticking.
I'll stay around. Let's do it.
All right. Well, this next thing is something that really boggles my mind. ING is pretty much a banking and financial services group in Europe. And they've pretty much just issued, I guess, you call it their equivalent of the Needham report from last year. And this just boggles my mind. Like this is not only technologically illiterate, like at some places, this is completely economically illiterate. And it's just mind-boggling that such a major financial company would be writing this. But they're pretty much arguing that Bitcoin is destined to become a niche asset. And the kind of mental tricks they pull to arrive at this conclusion are ridiculous. Like, for instance, they're pretty much comparing it against the narrow money supply of the world and going over different hypothetical percentages that you can have. And they try to pretty much make the case that 1% of the M1 supply is a marvelous goal to shoot for. And that would pretty much put us where we're at now. So that's the top of the bubble. And like, that's pretty much the first argument they make. But they go on to pretty much rationalize Bitcoin as a payment network as if on-chain payments are the only real option. And then go on to make a 5-point case that regulation and the lack of it is going to be a huge detriment going forward, because there's the possibility that a central bank is just going to make their own private crypto. And I mean, this completely misses the point on the entire value add of Bitcoin. It's a defined, predictable monetary supply that nobody can mess with. And the lack of the ability to regulate it is exactly why that quality can be maintained. They go on to argue that the lack of an intermediary is another pretty much downside. And like this is ridiculous to me, because there's absolutely nothing whatsoever that prevents you from running an intermediary business, like a Bitcoin bank or a payment processor. Like companies like Coinbase and BitPay demonstrate this perfectly. And then when they go on to talk about scalability, they again just fall back to this meme of moving things on chain is the only way to actually transfer control of Bitcoins. And they play the whole 7 transactions per second rationalization, and that can never work. And then the volatility. And they pretty much try to downsell the fact that, you know, as more liquidity comes into the market, as the price appreciates and the market cap builds up, like that will naturally create stability. And that's literally the entire long-term rationale of why this can be viable. Because as we go through this phase of acquiring value and becoming a functional commodity, then we can start to slowly transition into a stable like monetary unit, and hopefully start moving towards like functioning as a unit of account. And then the last one, this is where I really think the economic illiteracy really kicks in. They go through the whole energy use is too much argument. And they put it as, this is undesirable and unsustainable, diverting electricity away from other more useful applications. And I mean, this, like, that is basic economics. If something is a more useful application of a resource, then that's what the market will do with it, because people will pay the price. The producers of that thing will actually get the resource and devote it to that use. And the fact that so much electricity is being devoted to Bitcoin mining shows exactly that it is itself a useful application of that resource. I mean, this whole paper.
Come on, you know, the buildings full of people that are going to be replaced, all that air conditioning. Clearly, that's a much better, more efficient application, right? I mean, how many thousands of people are involved in just the ACH network alone? But that's clearly far more efficient to use all that energy to keep all those folks nice and cool as they flip through papers and pens and do the insane amount of manual labor that's still involved in trying to send a wire overseas.
I do like that they started off the article or paper by saying basically Bitcoin, not blockchain. We're talking about Bitcoin, not blockchain. But then they should have just stuck there, because their first point is that it's going to become such a great asset. And then they basically give all of these points about why it's so terrible. It's like, what is the purpose of this paper? You should have just stopped when you said Bitcoin, not blockchain, and left it at that.
Isn't it amazing? I swear to God, these guys all must get handed out the same playbook. You're going to bash Bitcoin, okay. Electricity, no one's in charge of it, used by criminals. I mean, come on, you guys, the same. Every Bitcoin critic has been reading from the same playbook for years. It's amazing they can't come up, they can't click refresh every once in a while and come up with some new criticisms.
Yeah, it always.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know I got, but sorry, go ahead, Rick.
I was just going to say, it always bugs me to see like these valuations and everything. They pin it in like this argument of a payment system and like the way that we currently use currency. And it's just like, you know, they don't take in the notion of like, this is a new technology and there's a, you know, we're still figuring out the way we're using it. And, you know, these layer 2 solutions are coming in and they just totally disregard all that information. And like you're saying, it, you know, luckily I haven't heard the criminal one that much lately. It seems like this energy one is like the new one where people are just like, yeah, we're just wasting energy. It's like, no, we're turning energy into value. Like, you know, you can waste energy, like JW's saying, you know, you can just like have a room full of people counting papers that don't really, you know, add up to real accountability. And yeah, so hopefully, you know, we'll get on the other side of this and these sort of valuations will be a little bit more relevant to what Bitcoin is trying to achieve and not what people try to pin it in.
But Rick, don't you know that Bitcoin is going to use the entire energy of the planet by 2020? We have to prepare for this. And I don't mean to interrupt, but I just noticed that your cat has made his first cameo in the Block Digest show.
Yeah.
In the background.
There. Yeah. That's usually what his position is, just somewhere in the apartment. Y'all got lucky today. He's just hanging back there with me today.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I know I was kind of rambly, you know, first going over it, but like there's still a few more just ridiculous fundamental misunderstandings in that report. Like they tried to explain like the notion of a network effect with a cryptocurrency and you know the entire rationalization of the argument that network effect is really the deciding factor in the success of something. But they paint it in the kind of light that that's something unique to cryptocurrency, like that doesn't apply to fiat currencies out there, and tried to rationalize based on that and the fact that these kinds of systems are open source, that you can just copy and paste something better and that network effect will just switch right over. And because of this, that the claim that Bitcoin has a finite supply is fallacious, because you can just copy and paste all these other cryptos and it doesn't matter that the actual Bitcoin network enforces scarcity, because you can just copy it. And because it's open source, the network effect will just hop over for any slight improvement on something.
Yeah, and I also want to point out really quickly, the reason why proof of work is necessary for Bitcoin and why it would probably be a bad idea to move to a different algorithm like proof of stake, or I believe it's the delegated proof of stake. I think we've said this before on the show, but Chris and I had a conversation with a guy who works with companies who are trying to develop quantum computers. And he told us very clearly, he said, any proof of stake coin, once quantum computing comes out, is going to get absolutely destroyed. Proof of work, as far as he can tell, would be safe against attacks by a quantum computer, but a proof of stake coin would be absolutely destroyed. So good luck, Ethereum.
Well, the other big problem with proof of stake that they just never really acknowledge is that when we have proof of work, I could hand you the blockchain and you could have never seen me, trusted me before. And you can tell that we've spent millions and millions of dollars over a really long period of time using the absolute maximum technology that our civilization has ever developed, right? And you can validate all of that in short order with a normal computer. If we go to proof of stake, you're just gonna have to trust me when I hand you the blockchain. That seems like a little bit of a security issue, right? So it's not even, it's kind of laughable, and that's why they haven't gone to it, I think. But either way, it's not, nobody's really taking that very seriously, I don't think.
I don't take any of these research articles or I don't take any of these things seriously. When you read through it, you understand that they don't understand any of the fundamental tech principles, economic principles. Nothing is understood. It's like, you know, someone trying to tell me in basketball, well, if I put a sixth player on the floor and just camp them out under the opponent's basket and we get a rebound and pass it to him every time, we'll win by 100. Like, you would, but that's against the rules. That's not how the game works at all. And you'd get technical if you even tried. So, I mean, especially the like 7 transactions per second. Like, I was watching a Jordan Belfort interview today that someone posted on Twitter where he starts his whole argument where he says, so Bitcoin is supposed to function as a currency, correct? And then he goes on for 5 minutes. And it's like, well, the 7 transactions per second. And it's like, Bitcoin is an asset right now that carries many definitions. Some of the value propositions that don't have to be a currency. They don't take Lightning or any of these things seriously. So it ends up, as the years have gone on, it's just more and more a waste of time to take any of these things seriously, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's really ridiculous. I mean, like, I just got into an argument the other day with somebody on Twitter about how the user experience of Lightning Network would be too complicated for users. And his argument pretty much boiled down to you have to click a few more buttons and scan another thing on the camera. And that's just too complicated for people. And I even like made a video using the Eclair wallet showing that it's like 1 click to open a channel, a payment that confirmed like Snap. And he still just tried to rationalize that this is too complex for people. I mean, like at this point, like their argument comes down to like it's a few more button clicks and people are too stupid to understand how to push a few more buttons. So it's never going to happen. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I've been seeing that Elizabeth Stark, I've been seeing, has been getting so much shit from journalists who they like try to interview her and then she gives them, you know, very clear explanations and then they just twist it in such weird ways and then they're not even willing to correct, you know, statements when they make them wrong. So, Jack, have you actually had any interactions with journalists that have done that kind of thing yet?
Not journalists, but just like Twitter or public interactions in general. A lot of these people look like they approach Elizabeth or myself or whoever with a job rather than looking to like, you know, interact in productive conversation, just a job to push a narrative. So it's just, again, it just boils down, it becomes like really uninteresting really quickly. I mean, Lightning, I don't want to pump it more than it's already pumped. It has some work that has to, you know, get done. And tomorrow you won't be able to like walk up to a Square merchant and scan and, you know, with a Lightning payment. But in the grand scheme of things, the efficiencies that it's going to offer compared to, you know, the traditional payment processing system and finance system that we use, it's going to work. It's going to work flawlessly, similar to how you don't know how the internet works and you use it today. Even myself, I work on the wallet in my bedroom by myself. And it works fine. As soon as this stuff starts to pick up, and you know, entrepreneurs are incentivized to build products on it and user interfaces on it. I don't know, not interesting. A lot of the Vinnie Linghams of the world, just they're there to push a narrative. You could tell him 2 + 2 = 4, and he'll sit there and he'll debate with you about it on the internet. So I don't know.
I'm really hopeful that maybe this is the last big pump of all of the coins that have really been riding on that Bitcoin can't scale narrative, right? Because you can confuse people that aren't technical. You know, I mean, for somebody that has a little bit of technical background, they just read about how Lightning works, and it's like, oh, this is brilliant! I can't believe you guys came up with this, right? But that's not most of the Bitcoin investment community. Most of us. We just have to take, like, I don't know, what are we reading, emotional cues and like eyebrow movements or something, right? Because we're not going to take the time to actually understand the technology. So, but we're about to cross that point where people can download a wallet and they can hit a button and they can just touch and feel it, just like, you know, when you first made a VoIP call, right? Like the long distance companies were like, oh, you know, packet switch networks will never work. They'll never be reliable enough. They drop data too much. You'll always need a good old long distance AT&T $100 a month long distance plan, right? But once it was deployed and once it was out there, the debate was over. You know, you just sounded like an absolute idiot to say anything like that. And I think it feels like, I mean, Jack would know a lot more than me, but it feels like we're getting pretty close to where people are just going to be able to touch and feel it and use it, and the debate will be over. At least the absurd version of the debate we've been dealing with for years now.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly getting close. I really do try and avoid like putting any more pressure on a lot of these people that are involved than they already have. But we're certainly really, really close. There's people that come to the Zap Slack and I hand them, you know, built binaries that they can just double click and play with, or they help them download from the GitHub, and I'll start publishing a lot of that stuff more publicly soon so that people can play on testnet and get a feel. But I want to make a quick point. A lot of my friends that maybe aren't so involved in crypto, but know that I'm working on this project, or a lot of people that are on the Bcash side, whatever the case is, or altcoin side, that are really emphatic about the fact that Bitcoin will never be able to scale and be used for anything, and if the world does adopt it, it just won't work and stuff. And well, how am I ever going to open a Lightning channel? Or if you want all of these questions answered of how Lightning is going to work without you knowing it's going to work, how we're going to scale, when's Mast and Schnorr going to be, give us when are we going to have an ETF? When are the futures contracts going to be more liquid? How about this, everyone? How about you give me a few years, and I'll get back to you when all of that's solved, when Square and all banks and everyone has Lightning running, and we've scaled all on chain without hard forking. I'll get back to you, but the price of Bitcoin might be $100,000 to $500,000 or whatever the case is. You know what I mean? I mean, this is like people that can stomach early risk, people that can self-educate, those that can, ask the right questions have been rewarded this year financially. And so if you want to wait until Lightning is just like on my iPhone, in my pocket, churning a node, clicking like add a new contact is opening a channel, and I'm scanning payments at my hot dog stand across the street, fine. Give me 2-3 years. I'll get back to you on that. But it might be too late to get involved and get in the ground on this stuff. So I don't know.
No, that's a great way to put it. I mean, that's why we have the opportunity to buy $10,000 Bitcoins, because there's just so much lack of understanding of how incredible this thing is, and so much doubt that it's going to work. I mean, even the technical guys, we all have our pet thing that keeps us up at night every once in a while, that creates some doubt. But yeah, once it's a reality, then the prices will reflect that reality.
Exactly. If this was certain to the entire world that Bitcoin is going to change the way that we think about not only money, but that we transfer and route it on a day-to-day basis, then this thing would not be trading at what is $16,000. This thing would be trading at $160,000 or $1.6 million. The fact that it's just not so globally known, it's reflecting it in the price. So I'm not shocked that people are doubting it and stuff. If everyone was as confident as I am, then I wouldn't be able to buy Bitcoin this cheap.
That's a really great way to put it. That's awesome.
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't be shocked from that kind of price rise either. I think it's great to see Lightning Network, and whenever I was coming on, Lightning Network was just being talked about, and it was, yeah, I've always seen it as a fascinating new way to do transactions. And yeah, I don't know, I see so much of these arguments where it's we're going to create this where we could do so many transactions per second, and it's this big system that with these expensive nodes, and it's just where's the interesting part of it? Because to me, it just sounds like you're building this big expensive system to do the same old stuff, sort of just a different way, where here it really does feel like, yeah, innovation, because there's real accountability behind that innovation still. And I think that's yeah, it's amazing. Then I can't wait to in those couple of years when we are transacting 0.000000 for a hot dog at the corner.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest benefit to Lightning Network is it's something I see almost nobody talk about. The entire transactional model right now, where you have to combine and create new inputs, which constantly fragments the unspent transaction output set. I mean, Lightning completely solves that issue as far as transacting as much as it can be. You open a channel with the outputs you put in, and when that channel closes, you wind up with one output. You could even potentially close multiple channels in a coin join and have multiple outputs wind up with one output. So that cost of interacting with the main chain just through using Lightning Network has one of the biggest problems solved. Like, you aren't winding up with all of these outputs stacking up that constantly increase in cost to move the more you wind up with.
Yeah, no, Lightning has a ton of features. Also privacy. It has some privacy features. Off-chain privacy is, I mean, for me, at least a lot better than on-chain. It won't be like perfect, but I am totally shocked. I can second you that. I am dumbfounded at the lack of resources that are being thrown at Lightning. I'm going to just use this to pump it a little bit. I think there are 10 developers working full-time on the Lightning protocol, which could very well be, you know, the future of payment processing and routing money around the world globally, especially on the internet. You know, Lightning is so native to the internet. All these videos that I love to post on Twitter and stuff, you guys see how quick it is. So I'm shocked. I really am. I remember joining the Lightning Slack just through like the core Slack. It was like a little channel, and there were 9 people in there, I think. And it was in February. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is what's going to scale Bitcoin. And there's 9 people in here, and we were all at the command line, like really trying inputs and stuff. It was like, there's no interface for me to use this or anything. Like, that's incredible. So the fact that, you know, there's 10 devs, the UIs that are being developed are just totally like when I have time in my apartment type stuff. So I agree. I hope it turns up soon, because the amount of, you know, efficiencies that this offers, you know, comparatively to Bitcoin as we know it, and privacy in Bitcoin, and then also, you know, even more to the traditional financial system and traditional payment processors that merchants deal with and that consumers deal with on a daily basis. It's going to be a big deal. So,
hey, before we lose that thought, how hard? Like, there's probably some developers listening, right? And I think the tendency for a lot of developers is probably to think, well, if you guys are close, then by the time I get ramped up on the technology and know what's going on, I'm not really going to be able to contribute. That would be my sort of reaction if you asked me why I don't, you know, why I'm not trying to come up to speed. And I'm not a very good developer, so maybe if you could speak to that, like, if let's say a developer with 7 years of experience, just, you know, building in you know, some back-end languages, SQL, C#, Scala, those sort of things. How useful could they be to Lightning right now or within a short period of time?
Yeah, sure. I'm glad you asked. So everyone that reaches out to me, I point them to the Slack channels that we all hang out in, and just spin up a Lightning node. It literally, if you are tech savvy enough, it takes 1 minute to download the dependencies and start syncing. And, you know, soon I'll just be posting Zap, you know, builds where you don't have to be technically savvy at all. You just double click and Zap will do its thing. But even if you have, you know, 30 minutes to play with it a day or a week, just finding bugs, testing payments, and even if you're not contributing with code, that's a really big deal. Because also, like, at the end of the day, this is a financial product or financial software. It's not a product, financial network, and needs to be well tested, well vetted, you know, dealing with other people's money. So at the very least, like, come on the Slack, spin up a node, try and pay someone else's Zap wallet, try and pay for a y'alls.org article. That would be incredible help in, you know, bug reports or, you know, verifying that things are working.
Awesome.
If you are a developer, obviously, like, you know, it's go to the GitHub and ask questions on the Slack and ask what issues like on GitHub aren't being tackled and whatever and whatnot. And it'll be very straightforward. Contrary to popular, you know, belief, this community is actually incredible, Lightning in particular. I think I can safely speak on behalf of everyone that hangs out in that Lightning Slack. You can ping them anytime. They'll be more than happy to answer questions and get more people involved. So the lightning.community, I think I can give Shinobi, you know, the links to this Slack, or you can ping me on Twitter or whatever, and I can link you to it.
Awesome. What's your Twitter handle again, just in case anybody's?
Just my name, Jack Mallers.
Awesome. Cool. You know, the other thing I was thinking as you were talking about that is that feeling is something that I think a lot of people that have worked at really big companies understand, right? Like they get hired at you know, Google or something like that, and they know how many buildings there are, they know how many people are involved, and then they end up on a team with like 5 guys, and it's like the project that the CEO talks about at like the last 4 quarterly meetings, and it's like 5 devs, and you just look around like, how is this massive facade, you know, boiling down to us 5 guys? So I think I'm shocked, but I'm not shocked, I guess, in a sense. So yeah, keep up the good work, and I'll definitely. I mean, I will. I'll say I'll do it, because then I'll feel guilty if I don't actually do it. I'll install a node, and I will do my best to find at least one bug for you guys.
Yeah.
Even like, I can even drill down in particular. There's a huge PR that's out, which would be a big deal for mainnet and big deal in general, which allows LND, which is probably the leading Lightning implementation, to be used with Bitcoin D, also known as Bitcoin Core. Right now, you have to have a Golang Bitcoin node running for a roast beef fork. So if we can get LND, which supports, you know, LND and Core supporting each other, there's a PR for that. And if you're technically savvy enough to help test that, that would be a big deal. Another Lightning plug, but I forgot I had to do it. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I think it's really fun to talk about the stuff that is good news, right? Because especially in the last 24 hours, we've all just been cursing, you know, basically one man over and over again. So it's good to remember that all this stuff isn't really significant compared to the, you know, the guys that are actually just doing good stuff for humanity. So thanks for doing that.
I just want to reiterate what JW is saying about, you know, thanks for doing what you guys are doing, because, you know, I talk to people and on the ground here, you know, at meetups and stuff, and whenever you describe like the actual amount of like devs working on this problem, you know, I think a lot of people are shocked that it's just like such a small group of guys working on it. And, you know, I know not many people, I guess, understand what y'all are trying to do. It seems like not many people do. I do, and I really appreciate what y'all are doing, because yeah, it's gonna change the world in an awesome way. Hopefully, you know, we'll get there soon.
Yeah, thanks, dude. That was nice. No, I mean, I've been watching people do amazing things in this community while, you know, I've been lucky enough to be a part of it for years now. So I think everyone's just doing their part. There's no MVPs in the Bitcoin community. People are asked to step up at different times. So I'm just thankful that I'm in a position where I can help and that people like what I do. It's a cool spot to be in. So I don't consider it work at all, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing.
Hey, what? I think we're still. Oh, you're back. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, he made it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about, like, you know, guys like you, Jack, are why this is gonna fucking work at the end of the day. Like, we actually need the tools to get built. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's.
But just kind of slide on.
Kind of wanted to make a joke that every time Jack adds a line of
with transitions.
What? You're a bit behind, Shinobi. I was gonna make a joke that every time Jack adds a line of code, a journalist dies or something, or journalist gets embarrassed. Because seriously, like, it's so, because I'm trying to like launch myself into journalism, not very well, because apparently I'm too controversial, but it like absolutely makes me ashamed to see how the Lightning team has been treated, and it's just so embarrassing. I mean, I've seen them come at, you know, Bitcoin in general, but the way that they don't care whether someone actually has knowledge of what they're talking about. And it's so disgusting. So I'm so glad that, you know, you and all the other Lightning devs are able to push through that and keep building great things. Yeah,
I mean, I love these compliments, and I'm actually going to pass them down to like those of the roast beef and Alex of Lightning Labs and Elizabeth the whole reason I started Zap is to get people to actually use their software. No one really could. So the real people that are the wizards are way over my head. Smartest people I've ever, been able to work with in my entire life are the likes of Roast Beef and Christian Decker and Rusty and those types. So I hope that they are listening to these compliments, because Zap is just, putting colors on what they got going on and making sure that everyone in the world can understand it and use it. But those people are the wizards that, we don't deserve to be in their presence type of people. Those people are very bright. So shouts out to the Lightning Protocol devs.
Mad shout out.
You guys all deserve credit, man. I mean, you're all contributing to the whole, like, regardless of who's contributing more or not. But all right, let's try the segue that I'm horribly bad at.
All right, man.
So keeping with the theme of expanding scales of FUD and stuff to deal with, this is just a quick blurb. The finance minister from France is going to propose to the president of the next G20 summit that all of the G20 nations pretty much discuss together pretty much how they're going to handle or regulate Bitcoin. And I mean, like, one of the things I've kind of been harping on for the past couple months is, like, we're on the big stage right now. Like, this isn't just us in like our internet communities trying to hack this stuff together anymore and like fight the FUD. Like, this is hitting millions of people now. And I mean, I think the incident with CNBC should pretty much demonstrate that perfectly. Like, this isn't just a couple hundred people watching some forum now with maybe a few dozen people being misled. Like, this is millions of people paying attention to this now. And most of them don't know head from their ass at this point. Like, they understand none of how this works, none of why this was made in the first place, and are just kind of grappling with how to handle it with very bad understandings that usually boil down to just analogies that are not really applicable to the underlying mechanics of how all this works. And, if this happens in April and we have pretty much all of the major nations of the world together on the same page discussing like how to regulate Bitcoin, like, there's a lot of bad things that could come out of this. I mean, if you look at like the tax regulations in the US right now, I mean, it's kind of absurd from the point of view of somebody using Bitcoin for actual commerce. I mean, if you look at some of the things being pushed for now, the US is trying to criminalize taking more than $10,000 worth of crypto out of the country. Well, what does that mean? Because I can just have some words memorized in my head. Does that constitute moving that money out of the border? They're trying to criminalize not declaring or obscuring your ownership of assets. Well, what does that mean? Like, do I have to put myself on a government or a public registry? And they're also trying to make steps kind of lagging behind Europe a little bit, declaring any kind of coin tumbling or mixing on the chain money laundering. And like, that's ridiculous, because if you aren't obscuring your traffic on chain, your entire financial history, if you have a few data points connected to your identity on the chain, is just open for anybody to look at. And that could be a serious risk, not only financially in terms of your economic relationships with others, but your physical safety. If people can kind of point the finger at some large amount of coins and either know or suspect that you own them. And I mean, these are kind of serious issues that we need to deal with going forward, because if they don't understand how any of this works, they're just going to pass bad laws, and we're going to have to collectively deal with the consequences of it.
Yeah, I just want to point out really quickly that all of the bills that Shinobi was talking about, they're just bills at this point. They're not laws. And if you know anything about the US legal system, it takes forever to get a bill passed, not only passed, but enacted and actually have actionable, enforceable policies and things like that. So what we're discussing now, obviously it's important to make people aware that this is something that could happen in the future, but none of this is set in stone yet. There's still plenty of time. If you're really scared and you don't want to have to deal with any of that, you can prepare in advance. And obviously, the bill could get thrown away if it doesn't get cleared by both the Senate and the legislature. So don't be too worried yet.
Yeah, I think it's just another case, kind of like just with the ING thing, where it's like, you know, people are really kind of just looking at it through this wrong lens, and you know, like they're saying it's used for money laundering, and you know, and get on the legalities of that. But we know that these big banks and institutions do that as well, and yeah, it's just it's one of these things where like maybe they can try and put some regulations and laws together to try and regulate Bitcoin, but we'll see it work its way around it, and maybe the regulations sort of and laws meander to where they're actually relevant, because I think a lot of that you know, attempted regulation, it'll probably just be routed around like we've seen with the China ban and so forth.
Janine just dropped this in the box, I guess, a French person's opinion on this recent announcement. Apparently, he's not so proud to be French anymore.
I've always been curious on how regulators were going to come down on Bitcoin ever since I got involved. Because you've always had the sense that they couldn't ignore it forever, especially if it worked, right? Which it seems like it is going to, and it is already. But how you regulate this thing, what justifies as money laundering or carrying Bitcoin across borders? I'd love to hear, you know, an answer on that. So I don't know. I obviously don't want to pay ridiculous taxes on it. I obviously want to be able to carry private keys in my head across borders without, you know, getting tackled or watched or whatever the case. But I don't know if I have too big of an opinion on it. Rather, I'm just really curious to see what they try and do, because I know if I were them, I would be like dumbfounded and lost, right? How am I supposed to justify whether Bitcoin is moving across borders or like, good luck, right? So I'm really curious to see this stuff pan out. These type of articles, like, let's all sit in a room and get together. Please do, because I know you by yourself, that means that you couldn't come up with anything. So I don't know. Curious.
Yeah, I'm wondering what Bill thinks of this perspective, but my perspective on all the regulation or SEC enforcement or whatever is going to come down to how politically connected each side is, right? So if you're invested in Bitcoin, then you probably are going to use your political influence for the benefit of Bitcoin. And if you're invested in something that competes with Bitcoin, you're going to put pressure on the SEC and all of the other, you know, agencies and use your political efforts there. So the way that I think about it is I'm hoping that these oligarchs see it before other people do, at least enough to invest in it, and then not push hard on trying to shut it down. I really see the SEC as just like another political institution, not a justice system. I don't know if that's a right way to look at it or not in your view, Bill.
Oh, I mean, regulation. I don't know. I don't even know where to start on that one. You know, you go to the dentist's office. Do you check that he's properly licensed? No, you just trust him because he's always done a good job for you, and that's just, I don't know, that's just the window dressing. I think if you look at any situation you've ever been in, who keeps the thieves out of it? The government watchdog or the guys that participate in that activity or play in that game are the guys that keep it clean. And so I am. Regulation has never been a big concern. I think particularly by the nature of Bitcoin, that it's almost unregulatable. I mean, it's, you know, like you said, where does it even reside? It's borderless and pseudonymous. It makes it almost impossible, particularly for someone who works for the government, that's going to get a good handle on it. So I don't think that's a regulation. However, it trickles down is going to be a big effect for the user. It might be a big effect for, you know, an exchange or where they need to domicile or what safeguards or, you know, what congressman they need in their pocket. That's how all this stuff tends to work. But I don't know. I tell me what, I don't see how crossing a border what? Your guys, border customs is going to play a role in me transporting Bitcoin? It almost seems well beyond, I mean, almost science fiction.
Yeah, I love the idea of if I had my, if I was a wealthy guy and I had $50 million in Bitcoin, just, I'm going through the airport. Let me just tell 5 random people that make $20 an hour that, I've got $5 million in untraceable currency on me. I'm sure that's a great idea. I'm sure all the congressmen and politicians that.
Well, if I try to explain to my tax accountant that that overstock purchase is a taxable event, and I think it's first in, first out, and forget it. I mean, it's going to cost probably more to educate my CPA than it is to just go ahead and make your best estimate and pay your taxes.
Yeah, totally. What it comes down to is if they do things that are impractical, there's not going to be, to use their term, voluntary compliance.
Well, I was going to say, it's always been my hope that maybe this regulation, it kind of does fall in place for, like you're saying, like the good, because I don't know, I see like, the government seeing institutions getting in the way of governing, like local constituents and such, to where maybe these regulations, when they do come in, they sort of click in this place to where government can govern again. And that's sort of like just a genuine starry-eyed hope of mine, as far as like, if it does land somewhere in the future, that's the way it lands.
I mean, but politicians also, they got to get reelected by their constituents. If I'm anti-Bitcoin, or if I'm a big pro-Bitcoiner and all sorts of, smart, bright, wealthy Silicon Valley startup types start relocating to my district because we're supportive, and then everyone else takes notice, right? I just think politicians are not prone, not anti. They just want, they want jobs in their district, and they want re-elections. And this is a thriving industry with like Jack said, some of the brightest people I ever known. Yeah, I'll take those guys and their families in my district. So no, I don't think I'm optimistic on that.
Me as well.
Yeah, I mean, really, when it comes to regulation, like all they can really try to do is deal with the peripheral institutions that actually interact with, Bitcoin. And I mean, really, the worst case that could happen, I mean, I really think we've already seen that with things like, Bitcoin Cash and the entire push for 2x, because really, like, kill shot I think they could accomplish with that is effectively allowing or forcing these exchanges that provide markets to list something out or else as Bitcoin, like kind of pull a swap-a-roo, like this thing is Bitcoin now, and we're just going to call it that, and nobody's going to listen to you, and most people won't know what's going on. And I mean, like the first real attempt at that was 2x. It just face planted, like it completely blew up in their face.
Yeah, I got Twitter on the side. I'll give you a Slush just came up with a perfect tweet on the whole Bcash GDAX. Number one, Conbase was never a Bitcoin company. They'll sell you whatever will make them profit. Number two, Bcash is a centralized scam designed to overtake success of Bitcoin by using propaganda to confuse newcomers. Avoid them both. Well done.
Dead on.
Very well, Slush.
That is spot on.
And a mere 3,500 likes since the show started, I think. I don't know.
Seems like a popular opinion. All right. Well, I'll try to keep my rant short on this one. So I guess bear with me, guys. But this is one of the most ridiculous things I have ever seen in my life. Terrabyte blocks for Bitcoin Cash. Terrabyte blocks. And like this I think drives home so many of the points that people arguing against this ridiculous notion of scaling, air quotes. It's insane. Like it would only allow 50 transactions per person for about a tenth of a penny a day. And this completely ignores the fact that a currency like this is going to be used by machines. That is one of the key selling points and kinds of markets that this enables that was just not possible before Bitcoin. It's just automatic economic interaction between machines. And they actually like do a pretty simplistic, although not off base, breakdown of the costs. They looking at that size of transaction throughput with that block size. They pretty much run through the hardware costs, the electricity costs, the bandwidth costs, and come up with a figure. Where was it? Sorry guys, bear with me. It was like 20 something $million, I believe, as the operating cost for the node. And okay, yeah. Yeah, the amortized cost over 20 years would be $1.3 million. So like 20 something $1 million to operate a node like this. And one of the things they do to kind of rationalize how nodes could be operated instead of just those ran by miners is putting ads in the wallets to allow non-mining nodes to be paid for to actually service light clients. And now I really want to like dissect this and drive this home. If they're going to put ads in your wallet, they're going to have to target you with ads that you find relevant. How do you think they're going to do that? They're going to start tagging merchant addresses. They're probably in the long term going to start trying to push things like invoices in the actual transaction to have some idea of what was bought. And they're going to start collecting metadata on all of the economic transactions that people engage in. Because you can't really target ads properly if you don't know what people are buying. So literally right here in their own breakdown of how it's affordable to have a terabyte block so that everybody can transact on chain, taking all of your economic transactions and crossing that with metadata, pretty much just destroying your economic privacy to target you with ads, is their openly stated plan for how to keep this economically viable. Literally turning this blockchain into a giant surveillance database used to target ads and collect data on all your economic activity is literally the plan for how to try and make this kind of scaling solution work. I mean, who in their right mind thinks that is a reasonable way to operate this system and that this won't just go horribly wrong in the most dystopian way possible? When operating a node is something that costs $20+ million, is going to be something only major corporations can actually afford to do. And you hand over all of your privacy to interact with the system. Like they're not even hiding it anymore. They're openly stating that is what they plan to do.
Yeah, I think that those like figures he was given is actually kind of dated to where now he says it'd be about 300,000 a year to operate a node, and like that would still be cost efficient for this moving transactions and creating this this network of payment systems. This is where it's like when I start looking into these sort of like this sort of way to change the world, that's where it's like, you know, you compare this to things like Lightning, and it's just like this so night and day. It's like this looks so dystopian and crap. It doesn't, there's nothing really interesting happening as far as, you know, trying to, you know, get rid of this third party. It's like just like everything, it sort of just misses the definition, and like we're going to do it the way we see it. And it's, yeah.
Totally. I mean, we can definitely save them some money. You don't have to spend $300,000 a year to run a database. If like, what problem are we solving again? Like, are we just trying to solve the problem of being able to update records in a database? That's covered, man. We've been able to do that for a really, really long time, and that's how banks run it right now. So if you want to go back to that, don't put all the bloat on top of it of creating a goofy blockchain just so you can burn through a ton of money and still have just as centralized of a system. Like, what's the point?
Wait, Shinobi, can you clarify? Are they actually putting the ads in the blockchain? Is that what they're doing, or just putting the data
in the
about
user wallet?
Yeah, in the wallet.
So it would
okay.
be like, to use your wallet, you would have ads all over it.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, this is just another one of those things that I will spend about 10 seconds paying attention to, and that's too much already. I agree with JW. What problem are we solving again? If something like Bcash and 1 terabyte blocks works, then there wasn't enough demand for Bitcoin and the censorship resistant form of money that, the friction and cost to get on the network and verify yourself are low. So if something like that works, then, Bitcoin has failed, and there turns out there's not as much demand for what Bitcoin is trying to accomplish right now as we thought, and we'll move on. But until then, until 2x and all of these XTs get shut down and these 1 terabyte papers we all get to laugh at together with on the internet, there's just a waste of time. Stupid. I don't even know the point. I would love to talk to the author and really sit down and get to know him or her, because it really baffles me that people waste their time like that. I really do want to know what is going through your brain when you sit down and do that study. Who's paying you?
Yeah. The only thing that helps me like not have a seizure is thinking back to the Nigerian prince email. And I remember doing some research and just being shocked at the percentage of people that will actually click on that email. And then seeing the A/B testing that these guys did, they actually tried. There was a lot of research on it because it was one of the most recognizable. But there was A/B testing done on the Nigerian prince email without misspellings, and then the Nigerian prince email with misspellings. And the cost of conversion of a victim was actually lower if it had more misspellings in it, because you had you didn't have to deal with basically the more intelligent folks that are clicking on it but are going to be skeptical, right? So if you make it just absolutely patently absurd, the big cost that you have is filtering in people that come in. They're already filtered before they get there. So it's actually just like kind of brilliantly evil. And I feel like a lot of this stuff falls in that category, right? Like, I just feel like they're trolling the intelligent people just to piss them off and have them completely ignore them so that they can just, enjoy the spoils of the dumb money that stumbles in.
There was one Bitcoin conference, I forget the name. There's a video on YouTube where someone asked Greg Maxwell if he thinks, what's the biggest threat to Bitcoin? Can Bitcoin be stopped in any way? I think it was years ago, 2015 maybe. And he says no at first, and then he pauses, and he's like, well, there's one thing that keeps me up at night, and that's if someone could successfully clog the system being get developers distracted, get people to stop innovating, get people to stop, working on what's important. And if, the community can be divided successfully in a way where, everyone is fighting over, really trivial points instead of working on innovating and improving and building infrastructure for what could be the future of money, that's the one thing that does get to me. And so, I always revert back to that quote whenever any of this stuff comes out. And I feel like, it's my duty and all of our duties to give it as much time as it deserves, but then right back to, what's really important and where Bitcoin needs to be, in 5 or 10 years, to protect us from, the traditional finance system in ways that we don't want to be exposed to. I love that quote. I got to find that YouTube link for you guys.
Yeah, I think I could probably watch that just on a loop all day long, and it would lower my blood pressure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, all right, let's try to get through these next two stories real quick, because these are both pretty much scammer alerts, and I'm with you at this point, Jack. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but for anybody not aware, nChain actually signed a strategic cooperation agreement with SBI one of the large Japanese conglomerates that's announced over the past year. They're getting ready to make big moves into the crypto space. And like this entire article is pretty much just them saying that they've set up a new investment arm to just invest in other projects and companies, and that this is going to be a big year for nChain and Bitcoin Cash. And I believe what they say in this article is that they're essentially an enabling company. If I can find that, I am so bad at this screen sharing stuff. We need Chris back. But yeah, it's pretty much just a pump piece for Bitcoin Cash, and saying that nChain's entire business model is just enabling other companies. And like this really like hurts my head when I look at this company and how many people are just completely fanboying nChain, while at the same time just spewing these ridiculous narratives about blockstream conspiracies and how they're funded by the bankers. When if you really step back and look at it abstractly, they're pretty much the exact same kind of company. They're companies that are trying to work on actual protocol enhancements and like build products that are directly kind of adding security or functionality to the base protocol itself. But when you look at a company like Blockstream, like they rolled out the satellite feed earlier this year out of nowhere, surprise. Like you can now actually interact with the blockchain for $100 and no continuing data costs. They've pushed out the simplicity paper and are working on a scripting language that is actually mathematically provable that it will execute correctly when you create a script in it. They have a developer working on their own Lightning Network implementation. Like they're actually pushing things out there. What has nChain done? Like what have they done except hire people all over the place to start pushing propaganda, have Craig Wright run around and talk about like all kinds of insane shit. Like he's found some mathematical property about the SHA-256 curve that nobody else is aware of. And like that instance in particular is pretty much claiming something that is mathematically nonsense that would do effectively what Schnorr signatures do, and not have all of the individual signatures involved in a multi-party contract like have to go into the chain. And like this deal with Jimmy Nguyen pretty much getting a job at SBI and setting up this strategic partnership, like they haven't actually built anything. They haven't discussed any product they're talking about. They just like keep putting on this image of a company working on the protocol while pushing these narratives that Blockstream, a company doing the same thing, which is actually pushing out developments like research, products for people to use, and demonize that. It's like some weird inverted mirror where it's like when we do this, it's okay, even though we haven't shown any results. But those guys over there actually showing results, they're just banksters trying to kill Bitcoin. It hurts my head.
But Shinobi, nChain has Craig Wright, and Craig Wright has a wheelbarrow of academic certificates. Where is the wheelbarrow at Blockstream? I want to see their academic certificates in a wheelbarrow.
18 degrees. The guy has 18 university degrees. How could he not be brilliant? The only thing that I can say is that it's again like the Nigerian prince thing, right? Like Craig Wright, I don't know why he's always associated with every one of the major scams. And if you haven't read it, go check out Dan Kaminsky's work where he debunks and shows that cryptographically, like provably, he is impersonating Satoshi in the scam that he put together. And it's always the same guys, right? Like even way back when he did this, I don't know when it was, a year or two ago. It was the same players, right? It's the same guys that are all working together and pulling the stuff off. So if you can see that Craig Wright is obviously a con man, which if you just don't have the right instincts when he gives a speech to know that, Just go look at what the work Dan Kaminsky did. It proves it really clearly. And then you can just draw a circle around him and all of his business associates that then you pretty much ignore 80% of the nonsense.
I'd say that's great advice.
I mean, it's been an elaborate scam for a long time now. Tried to convince everyone Satoshi, got the biggest miner behind them, Roger Ver, publicly shaming and bashing some of the more well-known, Bitcoin companies and accusing them totally falsely with no proof. I don't know. I would actually turn this into a question. Does anyone think Bcash will be around 12 months from now? I'm kind of curious. At this point, it's just like, when is it, like, how many cards do they have left? They got Coinbase involved. That was a big deal. Somehow Coinbase went from allowing people to dump it to, flipping it on the market with no warning or no pre-run. So I don't know. Who else can they get involved? President of the United States? I mean, it's getting ridiculous. Like at some point, as soon as there isn't a bigger card that trumps the last one, the whole deck is just going to fall apart. So nChain, I'd never even seen the picture of the CEO, that guy that was in the article. I don't even know who that is. So whatever.
I don't think they have a single developer right now, do they? I mean, I know that's kind of, you'd think that would be kind of a big point, but the developers aren't that expensive, right? Like, just get on Craigslist, man. Get like 2 or 3 developers. With what you guys spend on marketing, just get 3 like $60,000 a year right out of community college junior developers, and like, just give me something, right? Give me something that is at least plausible. But it's just CSW just running around, getting all sweaty. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like deathly. Sorry, Rick.
Go ahead. There.
The one of you
telephone jam.
Didn't one of you guys, I think it wasn't Rick, didn't you have a cat on the couch when this started? And I think he got up and left when you said Bcash.
I trained
That's awesome.
where he knows where if he hears me say Bcash, some anger's coming after. So he probably did jet right when I said it.
Last time he heard that, he caught like a shoe because you were just going crazy throwing stuff.
Yeah, but no kidding. Like, what I was just gonna say is, like, if Bcash is gonna be here a year from now, like, I don't know. Like, that seems like, they probably will be just in spirit, or like this little dust of what they are now, because hopefully by that point, I don't know, maybe like Coinbase and all these guys that want to sell these other things, they'll just focus on that and just get away from the Bitcoin blockchain, because it's starting to really just become aggravating whenever we're trying to progress and you see guys, holding up potential big deals because, the way that business has been running in cryptos, things haven't been changed. And, so maybe we should change that up a little bit within our space to get this thing running right, because it's vitally important that this thing succeed.
But the real question is the true vision Bitcoin Classic going to be around in another year?
That one's definitely going to be here in another year. That one is the one where, it'll be like the Phoenix Rising here in a little bit. It's going to be scary for all these Bcash guys.
Yeah, I don't think that's going away. Like, blockchains don't die. And I mean, like, looking at the one of the block explorers up for that right now, I think that Jihan is scared of it. Because like right now, like they're pumping out blocks like literally every minute. And like I was sitting there thinking about this yesterday, like that doesn't really make sense to me unless somebody is intentionally trying to drive the difficulty up again and stop people from mining it. And it's not going to work. Like it's not going anywhere. Blockchains, they don't die.
Unless it's the SegWit 2x blockchain, in which case it dies before it's even alive.
I'm praying that that thing stays in the dirt. Now we got to the end of the year before they say something about it. It's like I'm just like crossing my fingers. You're gonna get through the year. Nothing else is gonna be said about it.
This is such a. I know we're going to talk about the ForkGen tech stuff a little bit later, but yeah, I think it'll still be around. I think it'll be around until the dumb money works its way out of the space, right? Like, I think Lightning is going to make people a lot more educated because they'll be able to touch it and feel it. And I think we've got some more things like side chains that and people can touch and feel those and go, oh yeah, it actually does scale. So I think it will die eventually, but man, there's so many new people coming into the space, and these guys are just kind of like standing by the edge of the entrance and just grabbing people before they know what they're doing, or changing the logo like Coinbase did, so you don't know what you're doing, or Bitcoin.com subtly pushing you to Bitcoin Cash. When you go to Bitcoin.com, to get a Bitcoin wallet, you end up with a Bitcoin Cash wallet, right? I think that there's going to be enough of that sort of nonsense going on for a little bit longer. But we were talking about, I think like the last time we were on a show about, I think until we have something where you have a website and you can click and you can create a new fork, these guys are still going to be profitable because they're going to be able to rise above the noise. So I love what ForkGen's all about. Like, I think, you could create your own Bitcoin Classic, Bitcoin Cash. It's working. You guys are stealing the brand of Bitcoin Cash, but just by saying, hey, I want this, and I want to introduce these security vulnerabilities, and boom, you got your own fork ready to go. That's riddled with issues and is completely ridiculous, and you can start selling it.
I mean, like, my main worry is like if you look at like the kinds of things going on like with the CNBC and the head of marketing over there, and the way kind of Jimmy Nguyen kind of set up this relationship between nChain and SBI. I'm just worried about them dragging a lot of these bigger institutions or companies into like taking that stance, and then you kind of create the dynamic where they have to stick with it. Because if they really put like their reputation and their resources behind it, like that is a big hit reputationally to just like get behind something like that and then go, oh, we were just totally conned, lied to, and we fell for it. And I feel like that's going to be kind of a drive that really keeps this going maybe longer than we would think on that large scale.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the ForkGen, hopefully we just see so many more forks where they really do become irrelevant here quickly.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh. I guess the CIA is picking on Rick now instead of me. But get the second scammer out of the way. Kim.com, like this guy, like this fucking guy. Like he's just a hype machine that has been trying to insert himself into the Bitcoin space for like a couple of years now and never actually delivered anything. And after like very recently, like shilling Bitcoin Cash and like pumping that up as the big solution. Now he's on with BTC. Like forget all that stuff I was saying about Bitcoin Cash. I'm with Bitcoin, guys. And he's now trying to claim that this Bitcache project that has gone through like 3 different iterations, from just spamming the main chain with op returns to micro payments through payment channels, and is now claiming that this is going to be the solution to all of Bitcoin's problems. Like all of these will be passed once Bitcache launches. I still have yet to see a single actual explanation for how this platform works. It like changes every week.
I think he's confused how this is supposed to work. You're supposed to announce a project and then actually build it, and then at some point release it. I think he's getting confused because he just keeps announcing and then announcing another project. He's missing like steps 2 and 3 there, but other than that, he seems to have it really nailed.
Yeah, I just think it's incredible how many people are here to solve Bitcoin's problems, and it's just it's one of these things where it's like you're saying, you know, they got a different plan every month. It's like, I don't know. To me, it's just another one of these things where, like we've been saying, it's worth enough time to sort of say how ridiculous it is, but that's about as much time as it's worth.
I just love the fact that Bitcoin and Lightning and all of these, you know, technologies that people are working on are so open source, FOSS, like, you know, everything that's done as far as mapping out development and features and issues and bug reports is all done publicly. And then for someone to come out of the blue and be like, oh yeah, no, we solved that. Like, what? Who are you? It's like, I would love for you to come read the Lightning paper, come talk to some of us. Like, if you've solved micropayments, like, please tell me, because, you know, like, there's been people that have spent a large portion of their career now, years, working on this stuff. And so as someone who's like involved in the grassroots, which I'm not even, like, I'm like the high part of the grass, even those at the soil, I don't even want to know what someone like Roast Beef thinks when they read this. It just must be a joke. Like, oh yeah, the micropayment stuff. Oh yeah, me and my team of engineers, we solved that already. Like, what? You mean you guys have launched the Lightning already? I don't know. That Kim.com cracks me up, man. He's a funny dude.
Well, Jack, have you heard that apparently the solution to micropayments and privacy is to just trust it all to Intel? Have you heard of MobileCoin?
I have not heard of MobileCoin. Sounds interesting, though.
I feel like we're poisoning Jack's brain. Like, he's gonna leave us. He's gonna leave us done when we arrive. He's gonna sit down to code and he's just gonna drool. Like, he's just gonna drool down his shirt, and we're gonna have that on our heads.
Yeah, so if you want a fuller explanation of what MobileCoin is, we talked about it extensively at the beginning of the last show we did. But basic gist of it is that it's an upcoming coin within 6 months to a year. It's made by the creator of Signal, sadly enough, and he thinks he can solve transaction processing and privacy by putting the entire blockchain ledger into an Intel SGX software secure enclave thing. And the ledger is not public. You can't see it because apparently that's a fraud protection thing. If you can't see it, then you can't cheat. So that is his solution.
If you can't see, but how are you supposed to verify it?
Oh, you're asking too many questions already.
Well, yeah.
All right.
The only thing you could ask is, where can I invest? Where do I buy? Where do I buy? That's the only thing you're allowed to say at this point.
Mm-hmm. My wife just goes, you guys are still talking about Bitcoin? I go, I'm always talking about Bitcoin. What else is there to talk about?
Yeah, that's a little too close to home there.
Wait, so Bitcoin Mom is saying we've talked too long about Bitcoin. That's a problem. How long have we been on here?
Yeah, I think we might need to channel it down.
Well, let's try to smush these next two things into one comment period. Then I guess Youbit, a South Korean exchange, has pretty much had to shut their doors after losing 17% of their total assets. And obviously, if you've been paying attention to the headlines, a lot of hacks on Korean exchanges have pretty much been fingered to North Korea. And in the same note today, the U.S. has officially stated that Kim Jong-un and North Korea are the ones behind the Wannacry ransomware. So, I mean, I know a lot of people have kind of dismissed all these stories relating to North Korea as just like FUD to try to scare people away from Bitcoin. But I mean, at this point, it really does look like they legitimately are attempting to acquire Bitcoin and utilize Bitcoin. And, it might not look too well in the public light, but I mean, the fact that this is going on right now, in my mind, shows that this works. That, you can't really shut people out of the system. And if somebody finds a use for it, they're going to use it.
Right. And I don't know. I mean, like, I think North Korea's probably got some of the greatest use when it comes to trying to have censorship resistance and immutability in their value transfers. And, you know, it's something where, yeah, I think that they're definitely trying to acquire some Bitcoin like any country that's smart should be. But I thought what was interesting about that article with the North Korea and the Wannacry attacks is it didn't mention Bitcoin by name once. I mean, it just did talk about the Wannacry and ransomware attacks, but it didn't actually say the name Bitcoin. And yeah, that's something I think maybe we're starting to get out of that, where Bitcoin is just criminal activity. I mean, like, so the wording of the article was interesting to suggest that they were getting all this Bitcoin, but they didn't mention Bitcoin once. So I don't know. Hopefully we're steering away from that sort of argument where this is all just criminal activity and that's it. I think they're starting to realize that there's reasons why they get Bitcoin. It's not necessarily just criminal activity. It's because it has a use case, and that use case can get around the US government and other banking authorities that are telling them they can't do something.
I think that's an awesome point. And then I'm also not shocked at all that, you know, countries are out there accumulating Bitcoin. Not shocked at all. And I don't think that it's going to be as discreet and private as the years go on. I think a lot of people have come to realize that if this thing works, there's a good chance it could become like a world reserve currency and a way to get out of a lot of the debt, you know, involved in these countries. And you know, if you're accumulating Bitcoin right now and in 10 years it's the world reserve currency and you're in a bunch of debt, it's like, well, I can't print you more US dollars, but I've got a couple thousand Bitcoin I can give you that are trading at 500 grand a piece or whatever. And so I'm not shocked. You know, I think is it Japan that's trying to regulate it, and merchant adoption is through the roof over there. So there's a lot of countries that are, you know, a lot softer with their approach to Bitcoin and even aggressive at times compared to the United States. And I'm not shocked at all. It doesn't shock me.
Well, you guys want to dive into a dissection of the Zerolink test earlier today?
Yeah, sure. Bill's not just as excited.
No, I don't know what it is.
This is probably, you know.
Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit.
Sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
It's good news.
Sorry. Were you gonna say something, Bill?
No, I was just gonna say no. Start from zero. I'm unfamiliar with it.
Zerolink is kind of like if you're aware of CoinJoin, it's kind of a way to mix transactions together. Zerolink is kind of like an iteration of that's a little more quick and efficient, where you don't kind of have to leave your coins running for a long period of time and mix them over and over again. It's kind of something that can be used as like a one-shot mix and you're done. But it just had its first test on the Bitcoin testnet yesterday, and it didn't go entirely as planned. They actually initially had the 100 participants that they were shooting for sign up for it, but there were some issues on the network level of things. So the initial mix winded up failing, and then the ones that succeeded, I think the biggest one was 26 people, and then there were a few with like 7 or so participants. But pretty much the issue was entirely on the network level, with communication between the client and the mixer. A number of the clients actually had their internet connection cut out, or the WebSocket connectivity kind of drop off. And this kind of threw the mixer for a loop, because it wasn't regularly checking to make sure that everybody was still online, and it just did a kind of a final check before the mix. And then most of the people who were part of it weren't there. It kind of dropped that off, and then only 26 reconnected as the next one went through. And a few of the people were actually getting an error message on the client side that the mixer went offline. This was kind of just like a problem with the error message. but all of the aspects of things actually handling the transactions went perfectly. Like the transactions were committed to, like nobody's money was lost. It's pretty much just the issue of like the actual wallet communicating with the server doing the mixing. And so, you know, it would have been nice if it kind of just went off flawlessly, but you know, nothing ever gets done perfect the first time. And, you know, obviously all the real important parts, your transactions, you know, not being tricked into pretty much having your money stolen didn't happen. So I'd say that's at its core a good thing. But pretty much what he's going to be doing is looking back through the network code and kind of reassess that and re-engineer things. And I mean, a little bit of this is kind of just like a history of like him setting up the mix and kind of how he went through actually making people aware of it and getting everybody involved. But unfortunately, because it didn't succeed right off the bat, they're going to be delaying things until 2018 as far as a release on mainnet. But I think this is very encouraging, because this is something that's it's really kind of a tricky issue when you're doing like mixing, because it can be very expensive as far as block space with other alternatives there, when you have to mix through multiple rounds and pay for block space every time. And to kind of have something where you can just kind of connect, like do the one mix with a decent sized anonymity set and then just move on from that, it's a lot more cost effective economically. And I'm really kind of interested next year to see this going forward, and maybe seeing some collaboration between, you know, him and the other Zerolink developer and Lightning developers. Because like I was saying earlier, you know, one of the most interesting things with Lightning is how it is a lot more efficient in handling the unspent outputs. And if you could kind of hybridize like the closing and opening of channels with something like this, you could be a lot more efficient handling the outputs, and also add like another layer of kind of obscuring like whose money is going where when you're moving in and out of the Lightning network. So, I mean, overall, it didn't go entirely as planned, but I think it's very encouraging steps going forward.
I didn't say it was good news, right? I mean, even though it didn't go as expected, we didn't try to like launch it, right? It was a test, so it did what it was supposed to do. It revealed some flaws. We have to wait a couple more months. That's not that big of a deal, right? And this is the difference between professional, careful, thoughtful people, right? And people that will just push out code with like, you know, 7 off by 1 errors and try to push it to production.
That's literally exactly what I was going to say. I haven't read the paper, so I can't, or read the article yet, so I can't comment too much on some of the technical stuff that he was talking about. But it sounds like this test did the job. This is why we have a test net, and I'm just excited that there are people out there working on it. Like, I think it was Jimmy Song or someone recently said there's people that think about what Bitcoin will look like in 6 weeks, and there's people that think about what it's going to look like in 6 years or whatever. And this stuff's a process, but it seems like, you know, there were bugs found, which is good. That's what testnet's for. And yeah, I agree, Shinobi's monkey. I don't know what it is, to be honest, but I agree that I'm very excited to see Lightning on mainnet, to see some of the Zerolink stuff on mainnet. Bitcoin will look a lot different in a few years for the better, in my prediction. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have like 2 or 3 different handles that I go by that I don't really hide. I really need to kind of work on condensing that. So it's.
I know. I knew you via Twitter first, and then I started watching. I've seen some of the episodes, and like monkey. Why are they calling him monkey? I don't understand. Is this the same person?
Oh yeah, that's.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yes, I'm not really sure whether to settle with the iTroll handle or kind of condense to Shinobi Monkey. I go pickle there.
It's all good, man. I like them both. Both cool names by me. But it's Shinobi. No, not Shinobis, right? Shinobi.
The Shinobius monk kind of just came from one night listening to Thelonious Monk, and I was just like, oh, wordplay. I'm doing it.
Okay. Awesome. All right, I got it.
And I guess JW, sure you'll have a little bit to say on this, but to all Bitcoiners out there who want to join
did this, but I'm so happy about
it. There is now literally, in the same way that there used to be websites out there like years and years ago, where you could just press a few buttons and make your own altcoin. Well, guess what? Now you can do that with your own Bitcoin fork. You can select your own name, your own coin listing abbreviation, the block size limit when the fork happens. You can even pay a little extra to not have replay protection if you want to be an asshole, to kind of be blunt. And choose the angle of the logo. And the one thing I like is they're actually offering options here for the different address formats, so that at least that doesn't cause confusion for people out there and losing money. And I hear there's also coupons floating around for discounts for this. But yeah, for anybody who has ever wanted their own altcoin.
If you want coupons, you can ask Mr. Hodl. He apparently has a bunch of those.
But if you've ever wanted your own altcoin or Bitcoin fork, it's 0.01 BTC. You can spin it up today, guys.
So apparently they are working on adding the option to include security bugs, because it's, it doesn't really make sense to do a fork of Bitcoin unless you make it ASIC soft, or I don't know. Let's see, what is Litecoin? We'll just increase the number of blocks, so we don't increase the block size to a dangerous level, but we'll get our bloat that way. What are the other popular flaws? Oh, we'll make sure that we add in transaction malleability again, because we definitely don't want to have any layer 2 possibilities. So I'm excited, because I'm seriously gonna fire up at least 2 of them, just so that I can show everybody what a Litecoin actually looks like. And just, these are the drop down options. You want to have Litecoin, just jack it up this way. And if you want Bcash, just pick these security flaws, and you're good to go.
I mean, it's this space is going to have the absolute weirdest history book ever written on this planet in the next 20 or 30 years. It's going to be like reading a sci-fi novel.
Really, I wonder if they'll let us do like Ethereum, where you have a drop down and you can pick, I want a dangerously unhealthy person to be the center of this whole thing, and then if anything happens to that person, the value will drop. I don't know if that's really a security bug, but that would be cool too.
They should also give you the option of which nation states to partner with.
Yeah, how many Satoshis? I want at least 3 fake Satoshis behind my coin.
Yeah, this space has become kind of a parody here.
Yeah, sorry about that, Rick. But
hey, I don't know if
kind of been going for quite a while. Oh, I'm sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
Oh no, so I don't know if there's old news or not. I just got the news wires up on the left half of the screen. New York Stock Exchange petitions SEC for Bitcoin ETF listing. Is that old news, or it's got a decent 20 date? They want to list 2 products. One for the upside, one to make bearish bets, as they say, and one bullish. All right. Sorry, I didn't interrupt, but
you can't even keep up with the news just in the time that we're trying to go through the news. Bitcoin's amazing.
Yeah, the news just keeps popping. And
that's fortune.com. I'll obviously read it completely later, but if the headline means what it says, it means we're gonna get an ETF, and I do. I think that's one of the most bullish things, developments in the past few years.
Hell yeah, on those ETFs. I mean, once that those futures started to come out, they just started coming out, all of them. So hopefully, we'll see those ETFs here shortly. Fingers crossed.
And I guess the last story of the day is kind of an in-depth breakdown that Janine's really been digging into on Brave browser. And when this project first came out, I was actually very intrigued by it and very encouraged. But the direction they've gone, as Janine will go through, is just, oh man, we can't have nice things.
Yeah, so first thing I want to point out is that I haven't completely finished my investigation. I was originally going to publish a blog post when I started talking about this topic, but I didn't finish yet because there's so much to go through. And I also want to clarify that, I'm currently I would still consider myself a supporter of the Brave browser itself, but I would definitely steer people away from the Brave payments thing that they have now. Because I don't know, I think we have mentioned this already, but the Brave browser in September 2016 launched a Bitcoin wallet in their browser. And it was a big deal because it allowed you to do micropayments in the browser with Bitcoin to a select number of publishers who partnered with Brave. Shinobi, do you have any of the links that were in the description that you can show on the screen?
Yeah, just kind of give me which ones you want to throw up. I wasn't sure on the order.
Yeah, you can do them pretty much in the order that I had them listed in the description. So first I want to give a little bit of background. ProTip was actually the first, as far as I know, it was the first in-browser micropayments wallet. And Brave, Brendan Ike has actually admitted on a show we did when we interviewed him, I think in April of this year, he actually admitted that Brave was inspired by ProTip. And if you look at pictures of what the Bitcoin wallet used to look like against what ProTip still looks like, they look very, very similar. Sorry, losing my voice a bit. So this is actually when this was the day or two after they launched the Bitcoin wallet in the Brave browser way back in 2016. And Brendan Knight asked us how ProTip handled KYC. And we told him very simply, ProTip doesn't need to do KYC because we're a non-custodial wallet. It's completely decentralized. We never touch user keys. So we're not required to do any know your customer stuff. And he was puzzled. I thought that was interesting because we clearly tell him it's a decentralized wallet, it's non-custodial, and he claims that the Brave Bitcoin wallet is the same. He says we do the same, nice, but actually that's not true at all. The Brave Bitcoin wallet was actually never non-custodial. It was a custom wallet made by BitGo. And I think we've already said on the show, but the Bitcoin wallet that was in the Brave browser is actually now completely gone. I'm not even sure, and this is one of the things I investigate. There's no actually clear date when the Brave Bitcoin wallet stopped working because they never announced it. They just got rid of it and never really told anyone. The only way you could have known when it got disabled was if you were following the repository for the Brave ledger, which was originally just for Bitcoin. So if you were following the pull requests and the issues, you would have maybe noticed that they stopped taking contributions in Bitcoin. But as I said, they never announced it publicly that they were getting rid of the Bitcoin wallet. They only said that they were going to be adding BAT, the token that they made, to payments. So I found that a little fishy, like that seems a bit weird. But the other creepy thing that they do is anyone who had Bitcoin in their wallet at the time of the upgrade to BAT, the Bitcoin automatically got converted into the BAT token without your consent. You had no option to withdraw your Bitcoin from the wallet, which essentially means you bought a token. That's what you did. You bought a token with Bitcoin when it got automatically converted. And I find that highly questionable. Just in and of itself, like you shouldn't force someone to essentially buy a token. But why is it legally an issue? Well, the BAT token, as you see there, as I pointed out, it was ICO'd on May 31st. May 31st of this year. The actual platform where you could use the token was not announced until August, and the platform was not live until October. That means you had at least 4.5 months of no utility for this utility token. You couldn't actually use it. That you had was if you tried to trade it on a secondary exchange, which they say they didn't allow. But as we find out, if you go to the tweet from Luke, yeah. So I found this interesting tweet. It's Luke, who is an employee of Brave, and he was talking to an investor on Twitter who was concerned that the token might not increase in value or be profitable. And Luke says advertisers are going to want to buy BATs for campaigns, and hodlers will have BAT to offer. Now, why is this important? Because recently the SEC shut down a so-called utility token. Have utility necessarily, but because the company that was running it was telling investors that they could make a return on investment, that buying the token now would mean profit later, which is clearly a marker of a security. So this is a bit of a problem because Brave in their FAQ try to say, no, this token is definitely not a security. It's not a commodity. Interestingly enough, I found a bunch of evidence, which I haven't given the links to yet, but in my blog post, I will include it. They have referred to the BAT token in a number of different ways. They called it a cryptocurrency. They've called it money. They've called it a coin. Even though in their FAQ they say it's none of those things, they still use that kind of language in their promotional materials online, which I find really confusing and a bit dangerous. So if anyone there was thinking, oh, the BAT token was the holdout, it's clearly not a security because they have a platform up and running, well, this is a bit of a problem now because, I mean, if it wasn't already a problem with the fact that they didn't have a platform or utility for it for several months, in fact, it was the time between the token being sold in the token sale and the time between the platform being live, there was enough time for there to be a hack where they almost lost a significant amount of the tokens because the Ethereum multi-sig wallet failed. That's kind of a big deal. So I would say anyone who wants to get involved with the Brave browser, that's great. It offers a bunch of really awesome privacy features, but I would say that if you want to use the Brave payment system, I'd be extremely careful because at least in my view, there is now a significant possibility that at some point it could be classified as a security. And so if you buy it, you would technically be considered a participant, which puts you in a bit of legal risk. So I'm still investigating this, but that's the gist of the major stuff that I've found so far.
That's some crazy stuff.
Isn't there also the aspect of how they're pretty much operating the system so that content creators who aren't even registered with the system yet can have money sent to them, and kind of the mechanics of how that works?
Oh yeah, actually it's really awful. So if you want to be a creator, if you want to basically become a partner of Brave and be able to receive, like if you're, let's say Block Digest wanted to receive BAT tokens, no longer Bitcoin, unfortunately, but if they want to receive BAT tokens through Brave browser users, what we would have to do is I think it's, if you go to the Brave page, I did include the link, it's the little one with the lion on it where it says frequently, or yeah, that one, yeah. So this is the page where it tells you how to sign up as a creator on Brave. So they use a custodial wallet called Uphold, which unfortunately only serves the US and a bunch of European countries. So if you're a creator in, say, Asia or South America, Central America, you have no chance. Your only chance is if you campaign with Uphold to say, add your specific bank, or actually what they recommend you do is you get an account at an exchange, a cryptocurrency exchange. The exchange then communicates with Uphold. And so you basically get charged fees at all these different custodians. And that's how you can become a creator of Brave if you're not an American or European. If you are an American or European, you have to send tax forms to Brave to basically prove that you're a real person and you will pay taxes on all of this BAT token stuff that you received. So, you know, one of the things that Brendan Ice said during the interview that he did with Chris and I was that he thinks it's really important that we make it possible for creators of all shapes and sizes to be able to be reimbursed for their work. I don't see how, I mean, maybe they have a plan to make it easier or the conditions will be less strict in the future. But at this point, I don't feel like that mission is being served, because, you know, if you're limiting, you know, the number of creators that you can subscribe to or support to America and Europe, you've left a significant portion of the world out. And that seems a bit disappointing. So like I said, the Brave browser itself is great. I would be extremely careful if you want to get involved with the Brave payments aspect of this.
I mean, it's so like silly with Lightning Network right around the corner that they've hacked together this setup with so many middlemen and barriers and KYC restrictions, when the ability to just do this with almost no friction is literally right around the corner.
Yeah, my rules for cryptocurrency investment are: one, if you're investing in a cryptocurrency that's trying to be money, you have to pick the one that's most secure, because that just makes sense. And two, never invest in something that's a utility token on an open source project. It doesn't make sense, because the very first change that somebody's going to make is they're going to fork the code and they're going to enable Bitcoin, and everybody's going to choose Bitcoin over whatever stupid utility token is only useful on that thing. So you could do it maybe closed source, right? Like Kik is the the social network for teenagers in the US, right? And they're keeping it closed source for some period of time. We don't know how long. And maybe that'll work, right? And maybe they'll be able to actually get some funding and do some interesting experiments. In the long run, though, they want to open source it. And as soon as they do that, somebody's going to enable Bitcoin, and all those utility tokens are going to be worthless there as well. So it's just a very flawed and obviously flawed business model.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to point out about it is ever since, the Brave Bitcoin wallet came online and they've implemented these KYC procedures, they keep saying, and especially Brendan and I keep saying, that the reason they KYC people is as a fraud protection mechanism. And I mean, look, if you're going to do KYC, just admit it. You're doing it because you don't want the regulators to come after you. You don't want to be shut down. That's the real reason you're not doing it. It's not because of fraud. You're doing it so that you're doing it because you're not brave enough to actually stand up, to the people who think every single payment that every person makes should be constantly surveilled. And that's what's so disappointing, is that, I wish they would at least be brave enough to admit that. Like, if you want to be brave enough to admit that you're just submitting to the regulations of the time, because everyone knows by now that KYC is not a good fraud protection mechanism, especially in Bitcoin. Like, it's just not. Like, there's a reason we got rid of it, is because there are better ways to prevent fraud than to identify people every time they want to use their money.
Yeah, it's definitely something where I won't be risking myself. I mean, like the Brave browser, I mean, like, it's interesting, but this BATS thing definitely sounds like something I don't want to get involved with at all. And it's, yeah, definitely something where, it takes people like yourself, Janine. Like, that was good investigative work, like digging into all that, because, a lot of people aren't paying attention to what's going on and what's being said. And that's really important right now. What you're saying about your product in this space matters. We've seen that just the past couple of weeks. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely some shady way that it all came about, and it looks shady. So yeah, staying away from it.
I was just going to say, I stopped paying attention to Brave as soon as, the on-chain scaling got too much for anyone trying to do anything on Bitcoin, and they went the route of launching a token as opposed to investing in Lightning and, micropayment solutions through channels and stuff. But I'm glad that Janine, and there's people out there that are willing to do the investigative work for me, because I've checked out of Brave. They disappointed me, but I'm glad that someone's keeping them in check and aligned. So thank you.
Yeah, really good work.
And I guess Anybody got any final thoughts on all the stuff we've covered before we wrap it up for the day? I think we're getting close to like 2.5 hours.
Bitcoin's awesome. That's my final thought. Everything is good. The technology is good. Nobody's hacked it. It's under attack constantly. We're finally seeing insider trading and all this stuff play out that's been in the Bitcoin threat model for a while. That people have been worried about, but not really worried about because we think it's no problem. It's all good. It's just fun to be able to add additional lines of past attacks to that doc and see that it's all good.
Don't think I can top that one. Agreed.
Yeah, just thanks for having me on the show. And I'll see you all on the interwebs.
Yeah, thank both you guys for coming on.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I mean, like, you guys just gave us a couple hours out of your day. Like, we really appreciate it. It was a pretty interesting conversation the whole time. All right, well, I guess YouTubers, thanks for watching. You can like and subscribe if you want to. And stop into Crypt. If you just wind the progress bar all the way back to the start of the video, we'll go ahead and repeat everything for you. Everyone else, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Nice. See ya.